All right, here we go. This is NSCA, Essentials of Personal Training, Chapter 9. Last presentation here, presentation number 4, we're talking about interpretation of results, referral process to a lesser degree, and medical clearance also to a lesser degree. We're going to focus a lot of time on interpretation. Let's go ahead and jump into this. When you look at the ACSM screening algo, which we spent a lot of time in working on for 231, kinesiology 231, you have these two main subsets that are on the chart. Now in our book, they make a mistake here. It's not printed correctly, and I have one here that'll work a lot better for us. But the way this breaks out is on one side, the left side, you have apparently healthy who do not currently exercise, participants who do not exercise, and individuals with signs and symptoms who do not exercise. So notice those three are all do not exercise. These three are currently exercise, and then currently exercise. So you break it out into people who do not and who do exercise. And this actually, the screen grab you'll see come up on the screen will be from this article right here in Science Direct. You can do a control click and it'll open right up. But if we go ahead and go to a screen grab from that, this is actually rendered correctly, where it shows participates in regular exercise, no, or yes. So if a person does not participate in regular exercise, they would be over in this domain over here. If they do participate, then they're in this domain over here. If the person does not exercise, but they show no cardiovascular disease, no metabolic, and no renal disease, and no signs or symptoms suggestive of these, medical clearance is not necessary. Okay. Now, if you look at the same thing over maybe on this side, no cardiovascular, metabolic, or renal disease, and they do work out regularly, and they show no signs or symptoms, no medical clearance necessary. So what you'll notice is for all 6 of these subcategories, one is you have 3 of them that a person doesn't work out, 3 of them the person does work out. For medical clearance is not necessary, the person has to show no metabolic, cardiovascular, or renal disease, and no signs or symptoms. Notice that for both of those, no clearance is necessary. Where it differentiates between those two is the person who is not familiar with working out starts with light to moderate intensity, whereas the person who does work out can continue with moderate or vigorous intensity exercise. So notice the nuance there between those. Now, once you get into what would be number 2 on the previous slide, where it's known cardiovascular, metabolic, renal, and they're asymptomatic, then medical clearance recommended. Any signs or symptoms suggestive, medical clearance, etc. For this, and etc. for this. So just realize when you use this algo, you first have to categorize your people into either they're worker-outers or they're not worker-outers. And if they're not worker-outers, they're on the left side of the table. And if they work out, they're on the right side of the table. And then you kind of break it out from there from what you know regarding cardiovascular, metabolic, and renal disease. Now, with medical examinations, I would suggest this. When in doubt, have the person get an exam from their doctor. When was the last time you were at your doctor? Did your doctor send you in here? Does he want you to start working out? Well, no, I've not talked to my doctor in 10 years. Well, you might want to have a conversation with your physician about working out. Now, I don't really like doctors. I want to start working out. Now it becomes a conversation if you want to actually put a boundary up and say, well, I just can't work with you. Or now it becomes what forms do you need that person to sign? So you basically push the presumption of risk into their lap, and there's no liability on your side. Another conversation, another presentation. So with the PAR-Q, and I mentioned this in the other presentation, if a person responds no to all of the questions, it's pretty safe to assume that they can exercise. And you can start them off very much like what we just saw in the ACSM Algo all the way over, even if they don't work out on the left-hand side at light to maybe moderate exercise. If they've been working out and they fill out no, then they can probably go more vigorous, right? Just makes sense. With the different types of programs, they list unsupervised, supervised, and medical in the book. So unsupervised is just like it sounds. People come in, they're apparently healthy, they really don't have any risk factors, no contraindications. And this type of program, it kind of recognizes that there's a positive association with working out and regular activity. And so to a certain degree, it's like low barrier or low risk medication. Exercise is medication after all, if you think about it. And so these programs themselves, are usually facilitated with the help of a personal trainer, and they have long-term goals that require being fitter or more in shape or whatever that may be. And that can include you 1 day a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week, whatever that may be. A supervised program, it would be for people who perhaps have pre-existing conditions that might restrict any kind of involvement, but wouldn't limit their ability to actually do something. So to a certain degree, we've just changed in terms of what's going on. They're no longer apparently healthy and okay to work out. They have some kind of limitation involved, and they are usually directed by a certified fitness pro, and it might be a personal trainer, and you have people who kind of work one-on-one or hand-in-hand. Where this transitions is when we get into medically based programs. So I've alluded to like some of my experience working with a medical group where I was the person who did fitness programming, and I had people who were high BMI as well as anorexic, bulimic, usually as a result of some kind of traumatic life event. And so a lot of their time was spent with psychologists and people helping them with their psychological and emotional trauma. I gave them and provided them a workout environment that was welcoming, caring, all the things that you would have in that type of clinical environment. But it was different because those are medically supervised, and I had to be, to a certain degree, precise on what I administered in my workouts, but I also had to be precise in my conversations with the doctors in terms of articulating what we're doing and how my participants did. Because there's a different standard of care and there's a different presumption of care in a medically supervised program. So like even in the facilities I work in now, where I work with the elderly and I'm working with dementia patients, assisted living and skilled nursing, these folks, they're in a medically based environment. So I have different requirements in terms of my reporting and how I articulate my workouts. I mean, I checked in with my director of nursing earlier today regarding one of my clients who had fallen ill, just to kind of come up with a strategy and how we want to reintegrate him back into actually moving again. So, there's a different standard of care based upon a medically based environment. It's kind of fun to be in, if you kind of enjoy doing that, it's a little more meticulous kind of work, a little more, how can I say it, in terms of your reporting and using different software applications to report the workouts. But it's just different. It's definitely different between medically supervised and a supervised program. So, and I will say this, the supervised program looks and smells a lot like the regular old unsupervised program in terms of they talk about a personal trainer being involved with it. But I will say this, when you get into like a supervised program, I would tend to look at that and go, okay, you might have maybe a supervised program would include group training for elderly doing like silver sneakers or something like that. Whereas unsupervised could include a personal trainer, right? Or it could be a person going into a gym and working out and doing cardio and lifting weights on their own. So the unsupervised itself, what I don't like about the definition in the book here is I view unsupervised as somebody can go into their fitness facility, go in, lift weights, do cardio, maybe, I don't know, play basketball or whatever they do when they're working out, and they do so on a regular basis. And, they could be and might be with the help of a trainer, but not necessarily. Perhaps it's, weekly, perhaps it's every other week, whatever it is, but they're generally self-directed and unsupervised. So it's kind of quirky that they put trainer in here, because that's where I would tuck a trainer is down here in supervised program. So I think what they're getting at and they're trying to differentiate here is maybe perhaps in some environments, instead of a personal trainer, you might have somebody who does like a floor person, a person who works on the fitness floor, if I can just repackage what I just said, and they're helping people with their workouts and helping them along, but they may not be certified or might not be certified. Whereas supervised is a little more professional relationship where you're actually working with and being directed by a certified personal trainer. And that certified personal trainer is actually monitoring and working with the person and designing and developing programs for the person to follow. And there's a more regular interaction with that person because it's a hired client. All right. So I just didn't want you to get confused between unsupervised and supervised. I know they put personal trainer in here. With that, my friends, I'm going to sign off here and move on. Thanks.